Cut the lights. This is it. The night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing apart. We know every part by heart.
Hello there, true believers. This is Head Speaks, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. As usual, I am your host, Aaron Moss, aka Head. This is my mostly monthly Headcast, where I talk about comics, movies, role-playing games, TV shows, and anything else geeky that I want. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's begin.
What height will hit? On with the show, this is it.
And welcome back to Head Speaks. This time in What's in Head's Longbox, we're going to continue my multi-epic look at Armageddon 2001, where I'm trying to see if I can actually get these out on a timely basis and actually talk with other podcasters out there in the universe. Joining me once again, they were here a couple months ago talking some Superman Annual Number 3. They're back this time to talk about Action Comics Annual Number 3. Let's go ahead and welcome...
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's
Michael Bailey. Hey, Michael.
Hello.
And also joining us once again is Mr. Clinton Robinson.
And here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey,
Thanks for coming back.
thanks for having me back. I figured I was banned since last time.
No, if I can have Shag on here, almost anyone's safe. But yes, like I said, we talked here a couple months ago about Superman Annual Number 3. We're back for another Superman Comics Number 3. This one's Action Comics Annual Number 3. I'm going to go and give you guys a quick synopsis and information on it. Again, this information I'm going to read off, once again, comes from Mike's Amazing World of Comics. It's a great site. This was Action Comics Annual Number 3. The cover date just said 1991. To buy it on the stand, you had to be around on July the 9th of 1991. And the cover price was $2. The title for this one was Executive Action. Writer was Roger Stern. Penciler Tom Grummett. The inkers on this one was Dennis Rodier, Doug Hazelwood, Carlos Garzon, Brad Vincanta. The letter was Bill Oakley. The colorist was listed as Glenn Whitmore and Matt Hollingsworth, and edited by Mike Carlin. And the cover credits on this one was by Dave Gibbons. Our synopsis: the story starts with Superman in Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico fighting a horde of parademons. During the battle, Calabac is resurrected after being apparently killed off in New Gods number 12. After Superman stomps Calabac, the villain gets pulled into a boom tube created by Metron. Metron informs Superman that he implanted Calabac's location into Superman's mind. Metron departs, not caring that Superman doesn't really like the fact that he was used, which he informs Lois about later. Meanwhile, Wave Rider does a quick recap of his origins as he visits Superman once again. He comments how that when he looked into Batman's future, it was a little different what he saw when he saw Superman's, as we talked about in Superman Annual Number 3. He decides to look at Superman's future once again. In this future, Paul Kent dies when his tractor falls over on him. Clark and Lois move Ma in with them, they sell the Kent farm, and they get married. And they live happily ever after. Okay, maybe not. Superman busts into Intergang's warehouse and stops Intergang taking them out. Later at dinner, childhood friend Pete Ross announces his intention to run for president, and he would like Lois and Clark to run his campaign. As the campaign races on, at a rally, someone fires a newsie at Pete. I'm assuming it's a newsie, I'm not a gun guy, it looks like one. Clark rushes out to save his friend, taking some of the bullets, and also revealing that he's Superman. Pete says that he's not going to be able to continue, and he asks Clark/Superman to take over for him. Clark concedes and decides to run for president. Star Labs looks over his rocket and determines that he was born once the rocket crash landed on Earth, making Superman a natural citizen of America. At LexCorp, a man called Dick is talking to a shadowed man who refers to as Mr. L, whom he discovers Lex Luthor's son, and we'll talk about this more a little bit later on. Eventually, as the cover shows, Superman is elected President of the United States. Afterwards, Luthor Jr., still in shadows, and Richard Martin are talking with Clark's opponent, Herbert Forrest, about killing the President of Steel. Suddenly, the Secret Service bust in and arrest the two men, as Forrest was wearing a wire. Meanwhile, with Aquaman's help, Superman finds some sunken gold, retrieves it, and announces his plan to slowly introduce it into the economy And he plans on keep doing this to help out our economy in the country. The world continues spinning, and President Kent continues saving lives, improving and uniting the world. Wave Rider keeps watching, afraid that Superman will become monarch. He watches as Superman gathers the Justice League, Titans, Doom Patrol, and other heroes, such as Starman. He proposes that he's reducing the world's arms and wants these heroes to unite as one group to help police the world until he gets done doing so. Super conservative Guy Gardner gets upset that Superman is reducing our forces. He calls him a traitor and blasts him with his ring. A few heroes begin intervening, but Superman stands up and says, "I'm perfectly capable of handling Mr. Gardner on my own." And then he begins to do so. After a battle of whales, Superman is able to reform the Green Lantern ring around his own finger. That's when Hal and John Stewart show up. Guy mistakenly thinks they are here to help him since Superman stole, in quotes, his ring. He's shocked when the Green Lanterns arrest Guy and take him back to Oa. Back at the White House, Hal Jordan appears to President Kent and offers him a power battery to recharge his ring. Deciding that is too much power for one man, he returns the ring to Hal. Power converter satellites are launched to provide Earth with unlimited energy, basically turning Earth into a paradise. The Kents sit around discussing how they wish Pa could have lived to see this, as Wave Rider pulls out of Superman. In present time, Clark tells Lois that he needs to go, and he flies off to Metropolis, and he saves Pa Kent from being crushed by his tractor. Wave Rider watches, amazed, as Superman seems to remember somewhat their encounter enough to change his future. And the story continues on to Flash Annual number 4. So, before I normally ask you guys what you thought about this, I've got a quick question for Mike, since you are the Superman guy. Again, I was reading these as they came out, so I remember these stories. It's been 20 some odd years, 30 years.
Okay.
When they show Luthor Luthor Jr., they show him in shadows. They don't really give you a good look at Lex Luthor Jr. in quotes. Had they revealed Luthor Jr. in the comics yet? In the regular...
No, they had not. The summer of 91 was when Metropolis was in kind of dire straits after the death of Luthor at the end of 1990. And it wasn't until the storyline Blackout, it took me a second to remember it, which is kind of ironic considering it's about Superman losing his memory. But during Blackout is when Lex Luthor II reveals himself to the world. And over the course of the next few months, you really don't know who he is. So having him here in shadows made perfect sense, and it goes along kind of a thing where, like in the Superman annual, where they were kind of talking about some things that would eventually actually happen the next year. This annual continues to do that. So not showing Lex Luthor the second, or Jedediah Luthor, as I will occasionally call him because of his facial hair. Which, again, is kind of weird because he has an Australian accent, or what William Hootkins called an Australian accent in the Superman Lives audio drama, which wasn't actually all that bad. It's mean. And the man's passed away. And, I mean, good Lord, he was Porkins. He was Lieutenant Eckhart. He was one of the top men in Indiana, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he was Munson and Flash Gordon. So I should give him more credit than that. But, yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying... No, not yet. That would come later.
Okay, so this was Lex Luthor Jr.'s first appearance in...
I think he had been... There were some shadowy things going on, but since, Roger Stern wrote this annual, and he was really the guy that took point on Lex after Byrne left the Superman titles, so it makes sense that he would get to kind of foreshadow the younger Luthor in his annual as opposed to another one.
Okay, as I was reading this, because again, it's been 25, 30 years since I've read any of these stories, and I was reading these when they came out, because again, as I said in some other podcasts, I got into comics in 87. By 88, 89, I was full-blown comic addicted, buying almost everything DC and Marvel put out, so I was buying it. I just couldn't remember the time frame when this appeared, continuity-wise. Clinton. I started with Michael first last time, so let's go ahead and give you the chance. What are your thoughts on this issue overall?
This issue overall, it's a very solid story. As far as the alternate future part, it should be noted, you already pointed it out, but it should be really noted that Superman can retain at least a feeling about the alternate futures.
Right.
It kind of helps him set his course straight. And he's really the only character who can do this in all of Armageddon 2001. So, I mean, he's Superman for a reason, I guess. The framing sequence with Calabac, it's enjoyable, but I don't think it really has much play on the actual story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just gives him something to do and talk to Lois about. But yeah, you could substitute the Calabac portion with almost anything, really.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Intergang sequence from the Superman annual, except Intergang actually plays a stronger role in that annual. We never see anything about Apocalypse, New Genesis, any of the new gods at all after that one encounter.
Right. You're right. It is very... I say, yeah, you could substitute that beginning with almost anything. It would still come out the same.
But, I mean, yeah, other than that, like I said, it's really a solid issue. The art's great, and, you know, it's not as great as the Superman one, in my opinion, but it's still not bad.
And Mr. Bailey, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Oh, man. Okay. Wow. You want to talk, I love this Superman annual. To paraphrase Rob Kelly from one of the many episodes in the Fire and Water Network, I want to take this issue out back of the high school and get it pregnant. There are so many things about this annual that speak to me. One, Tom Grummett's artwork. Tom Grummett came onto the Superman books full time right when Superman the Man of Steel premiered in 1991. And I remember seeing his artwork for the first time and thinking, oh my God, it's like John Byrne and Carrie Gamble had a kid. And this is the type of Superman I love to see. So it gave me that kind of Byrne Gamble, style of Superman that I had been kind of missing. And here, he's got a lot of inkers on him, and I don't know if that's because the book was late or it was just easier to have a bunch of inkers. He is paired with Denise Rodier, who I don't know which pages are which, and he's also paired with Doug Hazelwood, who would be one of his main partners, especially on the Superboy series and the later in the 90s. So on an art standpoint, it is just magnificent throughout this entire book. The fight with Calabac, doesn't really fit anywhere, doesn't really matter to me, because it was just a really cool fight, and Grummett would go on with Carl Kessel to play with a lot of Kirby concepts, not the new gods, which I think, to be fair, I really think Carl Kessel and Tom Grummett should have been given the new gods in the 90s. Nothing against Walt Simonson and John Byrne and the other people that worked on them, but Kessel had a sensibility for those characters, and Grummett could just make them look awesome. The idea of Superman getting to run for president because this version of the legend, he wasn't technically born until he came into the United States. I believe they would refer to that as an anchor baby. At this point, maybe I'm getting that term wrong, that's entirely possible, was really cool because it gave you the option to have him run for president. And part of me, and this is just how my mind works, there is too much of oh, wow, this is so great. Look at all the great idea he's providing, and look at all the people in the world that are coming to Superman, and and now we're getting, it's more of a global, globalization towards the end. He wants to bring everybody together. He wants to kind of dismantle the military structure and have the Justice League help out with this. Wants to do a little more of that Superman 4 thing where, he wants to get rid of all the missiles. But it's a little too good of a future. It's like this is the complete polar opposite of Superman going crazy and dying at the hands of Batman. My favorite page in this entire annual, outside of the page of the headline showing him with his shirt in tatters over the form of Pete Ross, is later in the issue when he's addressing all of the heroes that he's assembled to kind of, make his mission statement work. it's a glorious shot of 1991. These are the heroes that were the big guns in the DC universe. There's only one person in this entire group that I don't recognize. It's one of the Doom Patrol people in the background. I recognize Robot Man, and I recognize Negative Man, who I think is going on by the name Rebus at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't recognize the girl in the trench coat, but you have Hawk and Dove, you have Guardian.
Was that Crazy Jane? Maybe?
Yeah, that's Crazy Jane.
Okay, so I know who that is, I just didn't recognize her. But you got Hawk and Dove, Fire and Ice, the Will Payton Starman, woohoo! Wonder Woman, Gangbuster, Batman and Robin, Martian Manhunter, Guy Gardner, Starfire, Nightwing, not quite in his second Nightwing outfit. You got the Flash, Red Star, Panther, everyone's favorite character, Phantasm, Agent Liberty, Blue Beetle, and the female Dr. Fate. And it's just like, so 10 years from now, they're all still around.
That's gonna happen.
And
but it's a great shot.
Will always be Arion's granddaughter.
Well, you know, of all of the terrible costumes she's had, I actually really liked this one.
Yeah.
Because I felt that it's actually almost sexier that she is covered from like neck to toe than, having, I will never argue with the original costume. But some of the, like the Guardians there, I love him, Gangbuster. It's like Tom Grummett is, I think for the first time, getting to draw a bunch of characters that he will have time with, in different eras. I'm trying to remember if this was around the time he took over. No, he was drawing New Titans at this point, because he drew some of Lonely Place of Dying,
right,
which was the end of 1989. And then he would draw Superman and Adventures of Superman, so he got a lot of Gangbuster time in. And the Guardian he would draw more when he and Kessel came back to Superboy after issue 50. So, and it may seem like, wow, you're spending a lot of time on this page. It's because it's awesome.
I have to agree with you.
My one nitpick, and it is so minor that I almost don't want to mention it, but it is kind of a nitpick, and my dog agrees with me on this. Roger Stern, I don't think Roger Stern liked Guy Gardner at all. If you read the novelization of The Life and Death of Superman and how he treats Guy, I get the sense that Roger Stern really didn't like this character, and he would write him in kind of an extreme sort of way. And this is... Guy did have the machismo, he did have the, patriotism, go Ronnie type mentality. But to have him go this far down the bend, it all was basically just to have that moment where Superman gets the ring and then turns it down. But still, it was a great fight. I loved it. I loved it a lot.
See, I'm right there with Roger, I think. I'm not a huge fan of Guy Gardner, so actually I could see Guy Gardner going, again, thinking that, he's better off, that he's better than Superman, and the whole, Gangbuster, like I said, the synopsis, super conservative. What you mean you're going to de-escalate us? We need to be the powerful people, the country. What are you doing, you traitor? I could almost see Guy Gardner doing that, so... Again, maybe it's just because I've got the same thoughts that Roger Stern does about him, but...
But other than that, I mean, this is a fun book. This is kind of a hopeful annual. Like, if the world turned out like this, it just seems to me that it would, we went through this. So I think it was a lot of Roger Stern kind of saying, if Superman was president, things would be better. There's some little things, like the fact that his running mate is African American, which would have been kind of, new at the time.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I just love this story.
Yeah, the same thought, yeah, seeing he had an African American woman running as his vice president was very, especially this time frame. I mean, this was a decade before Obama ran and became president, so... Yeah, it's very futuristic looking, and it's very optimistic tale that, other than Pa Kent dying, this is a great future if this was to happen. I mean, the world's at peace. He's de-armed the world. He's got, free energy for everybody. Other than Pa Kent not being there to enjoy it. I wouldn't want to see this in an actual comic, in actual continuity-wise, because, you make the world a peaceful place and there's no room for good storytelling. So, but no, I'm going to second and third your guys' comment. These are some, in my opinion, this is, out of the two Superman comics we've talked about so far, this is by far, in my opinion, the better one. Possibly because the artwork, in my opinion, is so much better. And you were commenting about how there's several different inkers on this one. It was the same way with the Superman annual also. They had Terry Austin, John Beatty, Dick Giordano, and Dennis Janke inking that one also. So again, I don't know if it was the annuals were running late, or if it's just because it was an annual, and it was something they were trying new with the whole crossover. Maybe they wanted to have different hands on it. I don't know.
It was probably just easier to divvy up the inking and keep the penciling pretty much the way it was. So, and again, it looks, you can kind of tell when the inking changes, and you can tell that some inkers complimented Grummett more than others. But overall, artistically, it's a great book.
Most definitely.
I vividly remember getting this and just being completely and utterly in love with it. It's like, yes, Pa dies, Jonathan dies, and that's something that people seem to love to do to Superman for some bizarre reason. But everyone else gets to go on. And another little foreshadowing thing that they did that I forgot to mention in my notes, that Pete Ross would become a senator the next year in a storyline that involved Agent Liberty. And then eventually he would be vice president of the United States when Lex Luthor is elected president. So him being in politics is one of those things that kind of sticks around. And this was the one where he and Lana ended up getting married, which again would happen in 1994.
Right. Kind of foreshadowing, if you will.
Yes.
Well, you're talking about you had that page of Superman, the newspaper of Superman over Pete's body, and then that one of Superman in front of all the superheroes talking. Another page besides those two I really like is page 17, where we have the left-hand side of the panel, Clark and Lois out on their date, going to dinner, dancing. And on the right-hand side, you see Wave Rider mimicking Clark through all his actions. Seeing how he's incorporating and living through Superman at this point. I just thought that was a nice touch.
It's a nice artistic trick. It really kind of shows that, to me, it hints at the fact that when he touches them, he's kind of existing along with them.
Right. I think that kind of shows that a little more here. So he kind of says that he, goes into them, but this, it kind of shows that he's not just viewing their life, he's actually kind of living their life in a fast forward to see it all quickly, which is a nice touch. I really like that panel. But as far as the story itself, all I can do is really mimic you guys that it's just a great story. It's got fantastic, I love the artwork in this story. It's very, when you see Superman, he's very Superman-esque, where the other one had some problems with him appearing kind of elongated, not quite right in some places. This one here is very what I like to see in Superman. I mean, there's a panel on page 29 where he's flying above LexCorp, using his X-ray vision looking into LexCorp, seeing when they get the news that the Supreme Court says that he was born in the United States. It's just very Superman just flying above.
That's another moment where this is fiction because the Supreme Court got something done quickly.
I'm curious where the huge line of people are demanding Superman's long form birth certificate.
Give him a few years. Anyway. That's another podcast entirely. Anyways, let's get back to this one. Yeah, I do like that gathering of heroes. Like I said, I do love Starman. That's why I've got a podcast about him. I love Hawk and Dove. I enjoyed the Doom Patrol series that was out at the time. Like I say, I read all these books. And yeah, it was, as I think Michael pointed out, kind of funny that however the teams were in 91, that's kind of how they pictured them for the next 10 years, like nothing was going to change. Costumes wouldn't change, or... Was Dr. Fate a woman at this time? Do you remember offhand, either of you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was still during that era where
Eric and Linda.
It was Eric and Linda, but I think this was around the time where it was always supposed to be a woman or something like that. Shag would know a lot more than I do because he's more of a Dr. Fate guy, or girl in this case, than I am. But I seem to remember that Dr. Fate was a woman for like 2 or 3 years through the end of that series.
I read that series. I couldn't remember when he or she or Dr. Fate changed back to being a guy, because again, it's been decades ago, and I've got very limited recall. So, but I do like the fact that he would keep being a woman for 10 years. I can see where they're going with that. That's what they're familiar with, so that's what they wrote. But other than that, that's a minor nitpick that nothing changed in 10 years really. Not worth really mentioning. I do love page 45, the battle of wills between Superman and Guy Gardner, and Superman just places his hand on top of Guy's and. He's like, consider this the contest of wills, Gardner's. Yours versus mine. And then he just kind of reforms itself around Superman's hand. He's like, you stole my ring. You can't do that. Then he starts beating on Superman. His gloves are all torn up and his hands are mangled. I just love that. And then page 49 where Hal comes in. We talk to the Guardians. Here's a power battery. You can be a Green Lantern now. And he's like, you know what? And again, that's very Superman attitude to have that, you know what? I've got enough power being Superman, being the president. I don't need this ring. No man should have that much power. I thought that was a nice, very Superman touch to the story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That is why Superman is one of the greatest heroes around. And again, the last page where we get Superman doing just a classic Superman pose, Wave Rider watching him right in the back of him. I just love that panel also. As far as the cover on this one, once again, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being this belongs in one of Professor Middleton's quarter bins, 2 being it's okay, 3 being it's a good cover, 4 being it's really good, and 5 being this needs to be a poster. Clinton, what would you give this cover?
I'll have to give this one a 3. It's a very well done cover. It definitely showcases what the story is going to be about. It'll draw in readers, but it's not very action-packed at all. And some people may be slightly dissuaded because of, looking at this thinking, oh, great, I'm going to be watching C-SPAN for 48 pages.
And Michael, what are your thoughts on this cover? What would you give this cover?
I'd give it a 4. It's Dave Gibbons. I mean, you can hardly go wrong with him as an artist. Superman looks great. There's a little something off about him, but if you're going to talk about a cover that's just going to grab your attention, Superman taking the oath of office with the American flag in the background is definitely one of those things that'll get your attention.
And I'm going to give it a 5. I would like this as a poster, even though, like Clint said, it's not action oriented. I actually think it's a really good cover. Like Michael said, you got Superman, you got Gibbons, you got the American flag. I think it's just a great cover. And like I say, seeing President again, Captain America did this previously when Captain America ran for president, whatever it was back in the early 80s, I think? He
was asked to run. He didn't actually run. I think you're thinking of the What If cover.
Possibly. I know
he's taking the oath of office.
That was before I got into reading comics. I know there was something about wanting Captain America to be president. I remember seeing some merchandise or something for it, but it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. I just really love this cover. Whenever I think about Armageddon 2001 and the covers, this is one of the covers I think of. So I really love this one. So Clinton, do you have any other thoughts on this? Anything we missed? Anything else you want to comment on?
I think we pretty much hit everything. Not as much as Superman hit Calabac in the first, but flipping through real fast just to double check. I think we pretty well covered it. This page 37, though, I would like to point out, every network has an S at the end, and this one gentleman is reporting for the ABS channel.
Yeah.
But no, this is we've said it all. It's a solid issue. The art is outstanding. The plot, everything. It's great, and the ending panel is everything you would expect from a Superman panel.
And Mr. Bailey, any closing thoughts on this issue? I
can't add anything to what Clinton said. it's a near perfect story. It was a very rare bit of hope against a sea of desolation and dystopian future, which is why it could never work. In all, I think that's actually why it ultimately doesn't come to pass. But one of my favorites, I pretty much liked all the Superman annuals from this summer. But this one was definitely artistically my favorite, and I think story my favorite as well.
And yeah, I have to agree with you guys. And the only other comment I'm going to make about this is on page 54. As I'm flipping through this, make sure there's other notes on this. The top of page 54, where Superman's picking up the tractor and Pocket's laying down the front of him. That's another great panel. I mean, I could sit through this book all day going through and look at all these great panels. Again, as I said, I like this one much more than the last Superman annual we looked at. And I enjoyed it. I say, yeah, it's a very optimistic, very hopeful, something that the last couple of Superman movies were missing, but that's another story entirely. We'll get into it some other time. but yeah, no, it was a fantastic annual. I say this is one of the ones I remember the most from Armageddon 2001. I just love this, and I could talk all day saying the same thing, how much I love it and how great it was. But I guess I'm going to stop talking about it here. Clinton, why don't you go and tell the folks at home where else they can find you on the internet?
Well, if people are desperate to find me, I do a little show called Coffee and Comics Podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. And it's also available directly on coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com. Closer related to what we've been talking about, I went and reviewed all of the annuals, not quite as in-depth as you're doing, Aaron, but you can find that at armageddon2001.blogspot.com. And I'm also on Twitter most of the time at Coffee Comics Blog.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Bailey, where can people find?
FortressofBailey2.com. It's the home of the Fortress of Bailey 2 podcasting network. Like I said, the last time I was on this show, I do a show called From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast with my friend Jeffrey, where we have been going through the post-crisis adventures of Superman, and one of those episodes from, oh, good God, years ago. Oh, man. Like 5, 6, 7 years ago, we talked about the Armageddon 2001 annuals. Jeffrey read them all. I think it turned his mind to mush. He didn't talk to me for like 3 weeks afterwards. Our arbitration had to happen because what I didn't know is when I started this thing, I created a binding arbitration clause, which I really need to work on. But no, FortressofBailey2.com, you can find From Crisis to Crisis. It all comes back to Superman, Overlook Dark Knight, and all of the other shows I have ever done that I have produced myself.
And I have to say, I love your shows. That's, as I said here and elsewhere, I between your From Crisis to Crisis and Shag and Rob's Firestorm podcast and Who's Who, it's the ones that got me into doing podcasts. I want to kind of model myself after you guys because you guys were just doing such a great job. But thank you very much for joining me once again, you guys. I plan on having you each on individually for some other shows, covering some more of the annuals, but I guess I'll do it this time. Again, I can't say thank you enough for taking time out of your busy lives to talk to little old me. I feel like a small fish in a big pond sometimes with some of you guys' podcasts, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It was a true pleasure.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it. If you're the small fish, that makes me the bait.
Not at all, Clint. Well, anyways, thank you guys very much, and we're going to go and take a break from here, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Head Speaks will be back after these important messages.
Attention all personnel. New from the Fire and Water Podcast Network, it's MASHcast. Hosted by MASH mega fan Rob Kelly and a rotating cast of VIPs, MASHcast analyzes, episode by episode, the greatest television series of all time, MASH. Find MASHcast on fireandwaterpodcast.com.
Jocularity!
Beginning in 2018, the Who's Who podcast enters the 1990s with our coverage of the loose leaf editions.
Featuring Superman by Jerry Ordway,
The Joker by Brian Bolland,
Wonder Woman by George Perez,
Sandman by Mike Dringenberg,
Batman by Norm Brayfogle,
The JLI by Adam Hughes,
Eclipso by Bart Sears,
The Legion of Superheroes by Keith Giffen,
Dark Stars by Travis Charest,
Lobo by Simon Bisley,
Kent Shakespeare by Chris Sprouse? Who is that?
Doomsday by Tom Grummett,
Wait, are we covering these by issue or in alphabetical order?
The Justice Society of America by Mike Parobeck,
The Forever People again? You are f***ing kidding me.
Doom Patrol by Richard Case,
I'm so confused.
and many more. The Who's Who podcast, going boldly into the 90s.
A proud member of the Fire and Water Podcast Network, I guess.
Come in, Aaron Moss, codename Head. I have an important mission for you, son. I need you to podcast about G.I. Joe, a real American hero, the comic book series previously published for Marvel Comics, currently being put out by IDW. Which issues, General Hawk? Issues? Well, son, you're going to cover the entire run, plus the yearbooks, special missions, order battle, everything, along with the cartoon. Wowzer, sir. That's a mighty large mission. That's why I'm assigning you several other Joes as they're available to help. And how do I report my findings? Monthly, at our main site, gijo.headspeaks.com, on iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. Submit your report under G.I. Joe, a real American Headcast. Anything else, sir? You can get further information on the social medias, Facebook, Google+, Twitter, all under G.I. Joe, a real American Headcast. Dismissed, soldier. Yes, sir. Now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
Yo, Joe.
And now back to Head Speaks.
And welcome back to another segment of Behind the Podcast. This month we have joining us one of my good buddies in podcasting. He's over on shows up all the time on my G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast show, plus he has his own range of his own network. Welcome, Pat Sampson. Hey there, Pat.
Hey, Aaron. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for
Great to be here.
Thank you for doing this with me. You'll be one of the. I probably played Shags already, and then I'm going to have you as probably my second guest on here. So I appreciate you.
Oh wow! I'm honored following Shag.
Helping me test pilot this thing and see how it works out.
Sure.
I talked last episode about the origins of this, so let's go and get right into the actual episode or the segments. So first off, Mr. Pat Sampson, why don't you tell us a little bit about your show at first? What shows do you have for people to listen to?
Well, I have. My original show is the Longbox Crusade, and that was originally just supposed to be me going through my comic collection chronologically from the many 20 plus or more than 20 plus long boxes that I have stashed away in my basement that I've been collecting from a wee kid. So. With that, then I would do I would do music, what was popular at the time, the top 3 songs for that cover date of that issue I was covering, some news at the time, and then that's about it. But it's grown more.
As they're wont to do.
Yeah.
Well, how did you come up with the idea to do just what, how'd you come up with the idea to do the show about your your crusade, your search to read them all?
Well, my original one was actually I was looking to do a G.I. Joe one. So then that's what got me stumbled across to hearing yours. And then I just would kind of listen in to the way you do the headcast, and then from there with the promos, I would go to listen to other shows that would be promoted in and listen to them as well. people on the Fire and Water Network. Ryan Daly's stuff is good as well too. So kind of just getting some of those examples, and then with that, I decided, well, since there's a G.I. Joe one out there and it's really good, what else could I do? Sure. I decided I got a lot of comics, and my wife has always been nagging me to either get rid of them or read them. And so the thought was to take her up on that and to begin reading them from the beginning of our earliest comic that I have to the latest one that I have. So that began that crusade, that journey, I guess, for me to read them all.
And when you first started, when you actually decided to do the podcast, what did you envision when you first started doing it? Did you have any thoughts or long-term plans? Or did you just plan on doing just one podcast? Or what was your plans originally? If you remember.
The plan was to do the podcast. That's all I had in my mind at the time was that podcast, to do that, and kind of journaling, chronicling my journey through those comics that I have, and my memories that I have of reading them or picking them up. From that, I didn't really honestly dream or think about where the show is right now, or the other shows that I have going on. I thought to myself, well, these guys are doing it. It's pretty easy. I got a DJ background. I'm used to talking, and I'm used to editing or at least mixing music, making mixtapes back in the day, if anybody remembers that.
Oh, yeah.
I got mixers floating around, so I would record my turntables, CD, tape deck, just kind of mix that all in, put that onto a cassette tape, and play that, and share that with friends. So that's kind of where, that's kind of what I thought. So,
right on. Well, you guys, I'm enjoying your show, so you're doing a good job at it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I do. Oh, go ahead.
Would you have something else? Go ahead and say what you're going to say. Do you think?
I do enjoy editing and learning. I've learned a lot on editing a podcast, and I've actually learned a lot on editing, posting, and all that. And I'm able to do it all for free.
Yes.
So it doesn't cost me. I don't have no hosting. I don't have.
Same here.
Yeah, and it works.
Yeah, a lot of the people, they use these other big podcasting places, and they're paying money monthly for this or that. I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. No, I do it all for free just because I'm cheap, and B, I don't have extra money. If I had to pay for this, I couldn't be podcasting like I do.
Yeah, I was doing it for a company, one of those, just to get it going, but then learning that I could, some simple do it by myself, and me being a technical person as well too, I was able to go, well, I can do this and save myself so much money. Plus, what I didn't like about the company that I had is they would get rid of older episodes.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, that's not going to help, or they would keep it if I paid them more money. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, no, when I started, I'm like, I don't have the money to pay to do this, but I found ways to do it online for free, just investigate, like you said, and it's a little more work, a little harder to actually do it all yourself like me and you do, but it saves you the money, and it gets more rewarding, personally.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I do too, I think.
You're actually doing the work, so.
Yeah.
Besides having a dozen shows and starting your own network, has things turned out much differently than what you envisioned originally, or is this the main show? Is that kind of still progressing like you want it to, or has it changed from your original thoughts?
I think the original podcast, the Longbox Crusade, has changed, and that changed when I started bringing on host with me, and that would be definitely changed once I got Jared on.
Jared ruins everything.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. Without him, I don't think it's been a great time, and we have such a great friendship right now that it's, yeah, I think, and being, having the ability to be on your show, kind of mentoring me, taking me under your wing, a lot of even like Ryan Daly and Shag, they would respond back to my emails on questioning and asking them, how do I start this, or what do you think of this? Same with you. Just the response back, I think, was very helpful and encouraging to get me to continue to do it and with the ideas. I would say without that kind of support, and just for a new guy starting out, that helped a lot. Definitely.
Yeah, the podcasters, it's a very insular group, and we listen to each other's shows. We, usually if you listen to Fire and Water, their feedback, most of the people that comment have their own shows. So seems like an insular group that listens to the podcast, they record the podcast, but they're also, for the most part, very friendly, very willing to help, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
When I got started, I asked, I had Shag on some earlier episodes, I asked him for his assistance. And it's a very good group of people. They set up a Facebook group to talk amongst ourselves. It started out doing a crossover for, it was Conway or someone that passed away. We originally set the group up for, but it's modified itself and it's became something different. It's
a community.
Yes, it's a little community.
It's a great
we bounce ideas off. We ask if we need help, if we need something, if we have, hey, what do you think about this show? We can throw it out there and get feedback from other podcasters. And like you said, they're all very helpful. It's a great community.
Yeah. As far as, I got off the subject there, but things changing on it. It was reaching out. I believe I would, I'm going to point the name at Ryan Daly again, as I asked him for some feedback, and he was like, if you get somebody on your show, you got that more conversation going instead of just me dry talking into a microphone like this and going as I was watching and reading Spider-Man number 42, and having that conversation with another person is very helpful, I think. And it definitely has, I think once I had Jared on and we started talking, and it was like, man, I got to do this again, because you just got people that have that chemistry, and it's something I look forward to every week now. We record something or we're doing something. It's really, really exciting and fun. But it was Ryan that kind of suggested me getting somebody else on that show to do that with me. And from there, it just kind of grew. Me and Jared had, I think, great chemistry together. We have fun talking. And then we brought on his brother, Jason, and then his friend Delvin. And from that, we've had some spin-offs. So the Longbox Crusade kind of has changed from just, it's supposed to be chronologically going through. It eventually changed to us doing that more of a random pull out of the long boxes. So it could be a random year out of the long box instead of in a row. And then bringing in with the other co-hosts I have, bringing in their thoughts on it as what's in their long box for at that time. But with that, then we did kick off. I wanted to kind of continue my reading, and so we had the spin-off show of Crusader Chronicles, which is the actual beginning, starting at the front to the end as well there too. And we got talking and did some other things. So now we have Saturday Matinee Theater, where we talk about Sherlock Holmes right now, but we're talking about old black and white, either TV serials, TV shows, movies, things like that is kind of what the concept is. And it's just another way for us to get together and talk, really, right, and have fun.
Well, So you talk like I met you through my show. You wrote in asking questions and as a listener. Yeah. How did you and Jared? You said you guys became friends. Did you guys meet through the show, or how did you guys meet? If you don't mind me asking, have you known him longer, or is it just did you meet him?
No, I haven't. I've actually known you longer, and I do appreciate you responding back to me. That was so awesome to get somebody to respond back to me.
No problem. I feel like I was talking with Clinton Robinson on my Head Speaks podcast last month, I think it was. You know, I had Michael Bailey on, who I consider one of my podcasting godfathers. Between him and Shag's show, those are the shows I listen to first, and those are the ones I kind of try to model myself after. So to talk with either Shag or Michael is like, to me, is royalty.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're saying. It's like, I feel like a small fish in a big pond, because I don't feel like anyone listens to my show. I feel like half the time I'm talking to myself or just talking to you guys, just for my own therapeutical purposes and get the stuff out. And then Clinton's like, well, no, if you're a small fish, I'm in a fish tank or something. So it feels good to know that there's people that have the same feelings that I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
definitely. I do have my list of people I would like to have and talk with. Michael's on there, definitely. Shag, I've gotten to talk a little bit with him. Hopefully I'm wanting to get on another show with me and Shag, Rob, all those different people, I think. And there's worked with Clinton. Great. We have fun talking with him. Just a bunch of different podcasting people. I got my list of, but I know they're all busy too. So someday.
Sometimes it's hard to get a hold of someone to. But yeah, for the most part, if they can, they try to be, because they're a great group of guys. And like I said, as far as podcasting wise, to me, Shag and Michael Bailey are upper tier. And when they respond to me, I almost feel like, like a little school, like, oh, they're talking to me. Oh, great, the cool kid's talking to me. Right on, I feel good.
Yeah.
But if you think they're just like us, they're geeks, they're fans, But yeah, they've been doing it longer, so I'm in the same boat you are. I've got a couple more people I'd like to talk with, but I'm slowly making progress, and so it's good. Like I said, it just feels it's good to hear other people have similar thoughts and and trepidations that I do. That
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to go back to the question, I know I keep.
That's what these things do. These things modify and change.
To how I got with Jared, I believe it was during. I think what Jared says is I think he heard my promo on a JLI episode.
Oh, okay.
I think Shag was nice enough to play one of my promos on an episode that Jared had just started kind of listening to. And so then he popped over and listened to one of my episodes. And in there, I talk about, hey, if you want to, want to talk or whatever, let me know and contact me. And so he contacted me. And from that point, I'm like, yeah, sure. And that was, again, from what Ryan said, I'm like, yeah, I'll get, if somebody wants to be on my show or talk to me with that, yeah, hopefully this guy isn't a freak or a weird guy, but.
And sadly, he was.
So, yeah.
No.
No, so we had like a test chat together and kind of planned out when we would meet up again to talk through one of the Star Wars issues we were covering at the time. We did that and had great conversation and just said, hey, I said, you're welcome back whenever you want to. So he just hasn't left yet.
You invite him in, now you can't get rid of him. Have you guys actually ever met in person yet, or just on the Skype?
It's just been on Skype, or we got our own chat group between the three of us or four of us. We have our own little daily texting chats that we do, and we are meeting up though at Heroes Con.
Right on.
Come in June, we will be, the full Longbox crew will be at Heroes Con.
Right on. Wish I could be there, meet you guys, but.
Well, it all depends though, because Jared's picking me up at the airport in Atlanta, and then we have about I don't know how many hours it is to Charlotte, but so I'll be road tripping with him there. So
I was gonna say, out in the middle of nowhere and dispose of your body. We were.
Yeah.
No, right on. So, hey, again, you've talked about your wife complaining about your comics and they're in the way. Do something with them. How does your wife feel about you podcasting? How does that work out? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, at first,
she was fine with it at the beginning. You know, it was like a little hobby that I could do. And then once I started talking to other people, she got a little weird, or I wouldn't say weird, but she got a little, unsure, like, oh, who are you talking to now? What's going on? But now that she's listened, she's actually had a chance to listen to some of the episodes with me and the other guys talking, and she's like, oh, you guys sound like you really have a lot of fun. And so I think she's come around to it.
You ever going to have her on as a guest on one of your shows? Or is she opposed?
What is that?
You ever have her on as a guest? Have you thought about that?
I've asked her several different times, yeah, but she doesn't want to. So, and then that's fine.
I've had my wife on once or twice, so it's.
Yeah, I know. She does very well, I would have to say. I enjoyed those episodes with her on.
Thank you. She feels, again, much like the rest of us do, I can't do this. I sound horrible. People love you on the show, honey. They love you when you're on. So,
yeah.
So let her know. Thank you.
I do think she's not too much into the comics, so I'm trying to, some day I may find something she would be interested in doing, but just not sure what it is. But now she allows me the time. We have set recording dates and times. I'll just tell her, hey, it's 9:00. I'm going to be recording. So.
Well, I'm glad you guys were able to get that worked out. And
yeah, I think that's very helpful.
Oh yeah, having a spouse that's willing to work, especially when you get addicted. I mean, if you're in one little show, it's not much, but like me and you, we've both gotten addicted to it. And I started two. I started one show, and the next month I did the next one. And then a year or two later, I started doing the G.I. Joe podcast, and then my Starman. So, yeah, it's slowly. Yeah. And then me and you, it grows. And then Andy somehow talked me into doing the Krypton podcast. And I found my limit.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the show, but just didn't have time.
Yeah. It's finding what you can do. I do have a lot of. Every time I have tons of ideas of podcasts that I like to do. The other thing is I'm the editor too, so editing takes up a lot of time. So you think what you're listening to right now is, if it's a an hour show, it's probably good, what do they say, triple the time of editing it sometimes or more.
Yeah, see, I don't mind editing. In fact, I find it easier to edit myself because I got a 3-year-old at home. It's easier for me to find time because I can put on one of the shows and he can sit there and watch YouTube or Netflix or something. Sure. I can sit there and edit. Whereas trying to record, I have to find time when I can have quiet. So that's my main problem. Is finding time to actually record without him in the background talking or listen to his shows or. So no, I definitely.
That's where I think getting, knowing when you can and getting certain dates and times down and scheduled to do your recording. That's what I found. Even when I was doing it signally, I had to, make sure, like you said, there wasn't anybody in the house. Dogs weren't barking.
Right on. So. What, at this point, seems to be your biggest obstacle with your show that you've ran into so far, if any?
I think the big obstacle that I have is just getting time to edit. Maybe it's just me. I'm more on myself with the editing. As I listen to other podcasts that do a great job of their edits and things like that, that helps me up my game as well too. I like placing music. I like placing bits and pieces into editing. So I get a little, I guess anal or when I'm editing, like I'll remove all the ums and the ahs, and if there's a few seconds of space, I'll cut that space down. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it. I don't know.
I do the same thing.
Just a way.
I do the same. I try to take out people's ums, and I find myself doing that much. What did I say that for? I got to remove that. And I'm like,
or longer silences or pauses.
That space is too long. I need to remove part of that. Should that be there? Is that an intent? Is that like a pregnant pause, or is that just a space? Yeah. So yeah, no, I'm definitely with you on that. I feel you.
Yeah. So I could kick things out a lot quicker. I do have tons. I don't want to say tons. I think right now I do have about 6 different episodes of different things I need to edit and get out. During the Christmas time, we did 12 Days of Christmas. And so I had to edit 12 episodes.
Yeah, I listened to that and I'm like, wow, Pat's a better man than I am. I don't have the time to record 12 daily shows and edit them, get them in. No, but Pat's, my hat's off to you, man. That was
thank you.
Great.
Thank you. I think it turned out pretty good. It was a great way of getting me down to editing. And what I learned from that is having a format to have for your script. If you're using a script, use a script, to have that kind of in a format. And then also in editing, having that format of, okay, I have my opening music, I have this, I have these different segments. So I kind of have all that kind of stuff scripted out. And once I've had that stuff built, I can just take the raw audio that I have and then, edit it down and then place it in between what I need to do. So I think that's what I learned doing that 12 Days of Crusademas was that show was kind of really formatted out pretty good. And the thing that helped too is we didn't really go on too much. I mean, we record a lot more audio than what people actually hear. Well, you know that being on the show.
Yeah, definitely.
But and then you hear some of that in the outtakes, and we get the. I guess I enjoy doing it, and if I can find my joy in doing that, editing and just the outtakes, and I'll go back and re-listen. I know Jared he'll re-listen to episodes over and over again, and we'll just keep laughing at ourselves, and that's all that matters.
Right on. Well, speaking of that, is there any particular incident or any anecdote or anything that you have that sticks out doing podcasting so far that you want to share with the listeners? Anything that jumps out at you?
That jumps out at me.
Special or anything? Any special moment you've had, or any particular funny thing that happened, or anything like that?
I would say the special moment was doing that 12 Days of Crusademas with the guys, just getting that all recorded and out and on time. To do 12 days in a row, each day we had an episode out, and it was recorded, it was edited, and I think the way we did that in recording is we would record certain segments because each one of us was a host for the 12 days. So then I had to kind of cut and copy and paste and do, different things like that. So that would be kind of a highlight. I think that was an enjoyment. Fun times. Oh, it's every time that we're on. There's so many funny things going on. And if you listen to Crusader Chronicles, which is the more ongoing show, and you'll hear the inside jokes, the gags that we have going on, that carry on to other things that we're doing, like with our James Bond, our MI6 rookie agents, where we're going through all the James Bond movies from start to finish. Some of the stuff carries over into there. And so it's just interesting. And what's fun and enjoyable and I just enjoy that we do have people that are listening and they're in on the joke as well too. And, they'll tweet it or they'll do something.
Live.
Yeah. It's just fun. And it's just the people that listen. I do really appreciate all the people that are listening and responding back, liking and sharing It's just so much to know that some, people are out there listening and enjoying what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. I know what you're talking about there. That's definitely a good feeling to get that validation from total strangers that you're not just out there talking to the wind. Just there's actually people out there that respond to you, and it's.
Well, and it's the response back of them laughing and that was so funny, or that was, and it's just, I'm glad I could make them happy. Right. And put a smile on somebody's face that I don't even know. I think that's, that means something to me is, if I can make somebody laugh that I don't even know and, maybe bring a smile to their day, and then it was well worth it. All the editing hours, all the recording with Jared. It was well worth it.
And I know, because I know sometimes as I've talked about it, I have problems, time management, trying to get my shows out on time. Because of the family, and sometimes I consider, maybe I should stop doing the Starman Manhunter show, or maybe I should, I don't know. And I get feedback from, people such as yourself and some other people. Well, if you need help with it, if you need this, let me know. I, enjoy the show. Keep doing it, please. I'm like, and things like that. And like I say, on the last episode of G.I. Joe we recorded, or we had a listener write in and actually take time out of his day and did some math and figured out, how many Joes was on the G.I. Joe team compared to how many issues the comic came out. Things like that. And people, I talked about the G.I. Joe podcast. That there's this G.I. Joe Canada Facebook group that I'm on, that one of the main founders of that, he's a listener, and he helps get the show. Cool. And he talked, he's like, new people come on the Facebook page. Oh, while you're at it, there's this G.I. Joe show, by Betty Aaron that check it out. So I appreciate, listeners like that. Cool. That, like you said, whenever, you start feel, is it worth it? You can make someone laugh, or you can make someone, if someone responds to you and let you know that they're feeling what you're doing, it makes it all worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely feel you on
definitely.
That. Well, that's. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you do bring up a good point of the timing of getting things out. That is something that I think I struggled with in the beginning as well, too. If you look back in my feed, I had a few 3 or 4 episodes strong, and then I kind of pittered out. And I think what helped me the most, too, is having the co-host. So you got other people encouraging you, too, and that look forward to it. So that helps me go, okay, I got to get an episode out. But I've learned not to, I guess we don't really have, with our episodes, we don't really have a set schedule where it's saying it's out on this day, or it's out on, I'm not, we haven't, I was going to go to try to do that, but, best laid plans are never met.
Yeah, I made that mistake. This show should be this should be on Tuesday. This should be the next Tuesday, and half the time, I'm a little late, but here it is. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't get paid to do this, so it's all my free time, and so a family and life gets in the way, and that's understandable. But I do think what you learn from that is, okay, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do. Like Longbox Crusade, trying to make that a monthly, to come out monthly. Crusader Chronicles is, you might get 2 or more, or 1 a month, and then Saturday Matinee. That's a smaller show because of the content that we're doing. Right. Is it's a 20-minute TV show, so not a lot to say about it. So that's easier to just get that done, and with the format we have, turn that over. I can turn that over in editing, within the next week. So that one will probably be like every other Saturday. So, but yeah, timing is definitely something that is something you would have to. Don't make dates and set dates that you may not be able to do. And, let you set those expectations.
Very good. Hang on a second. Yeah, it's very good advice. It's very good. Do you have anything else you want to let the listening audience know, or anything, or any other comments or anything? Anything I haven't covered that you want to share, or?
No, I would just say if anybody that is out there thinking of doing it or are doing it, and feel free to reach out and contact me. And if you got questions or anything that I could help out with, I just want to pay it forward, like from the ones that have, like you, Ryan Daly, Shag, and other podcasters. Ruth and Darren Sutherland. Darren gave me lots of great feedback. I just, if you got somebody, ask them, hey, listen to my show. Tell me, what you think about it. Get that feedback.
Most definitely. Speaking of feedback, like you were talking earlier, it's easier to do this talking to somebody else instead of by yourself. I've had people just listen to some of my different shows, and they say, yeah, listening to your different shows, you're more relaxed and you're a bit, freer, but you're a little more, it's a better show when I'm talking to other people instead of, like you said, okay, this month I am looking at Suicide Squad number 15. It's easier, to actually, because you get more of a conversational tone and the joking and the back and forth. So, it is a better show.
Definitely helpful. I'm not saying nothing's wrong with single shows. I mean, that's what I started out doing, and I do feel a little more relaxed, and it's just more off the cuff stuff. We script wise we have a script, but it's just to kind of give us a guideline on what we're talking about or where we need to be in the show. So and that changes too. That's what makes it fun and exciting, is because you don't know what the other person may or may not say and what rabbit hole that's going to take you down.
Yeah, no, definitely, it's part of the fun.
Yeah, but doing single episodes too. If you're good at it and you're used to doing it, and you have a method to your madness, to doing it, that can work out great too. I mean, I listen to several podcasts that are that way and enjoy them. So, the stuff you do, I enjoy it. I enjoy it because I'm learning. I'm learning about these are.
I want to do this. I want to do that.
No, not at all. I'm learning about Suicide Squad, Task Force X, Checkmate. I mean, it got me interested into research, finding old Checkmate comic books and things like that. So
I like hearing that, because to me that kind of validates the show and kind of makes me feel better about wasting my time, if you will, doing this. If I get someone that says, and I've heard from other people on Facebook, whatever, I used to listen to it, or I never did read this, but I heard you talk about it, so I want to check it out. It's really good. So if it turns people on, or if it brings people back to something they haven't read in decades, it's a really good feeling.
Or I use it as I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
I look at my thing, and I think I have about 20 or about 50 some 54. Currently, I have 54 subscriptions right now. So I do a lot of podcast listening.
Yeah, I've had to drop some just because I get so far behind. I don't have time. So there's some like Darren and Ruth Southern. I want to listen to their shows because they're great people. But their shows, it's nothing that really calls at me. And I want to listen to hear them talk, but I just don't have the time to, with all these other shows I really want to listen to some other shows. And then some shows, I listen to a lot of Andy B shows over on the CW network shows. I listen to a lot of them, but I get behind on the TV show, or on the podcast, so I just stop listening to most of them just because I don't have enough time. I get behind.
Yeah. It takes.
So I have to make cuts somewhere. But well, anyways, I guess I'll do it for this time. I wish to thank you very much, Pat, for joining me in this little endeavor I'm trying. Hopefully it works out right and comes out good and people enjoy it. Why don't you tell people where they can find you? If they, we talked a little bit about your podcast. Why don't you tell them exactly where they can find you, what the name of your shows are, and if they want to contact you, how to contact you.
All right. Well, you can find my podcast at longboxcrusade. You can find the podcast at longboxcrusade.com is the main blog,
area feed. You can find it on Apple at Longbox Crusade. Also, through that is the spin-off show Crusader Chronicles, where we are chronologically going through my comic book collection via either in a issue or trade or even digitally now. And so you can find us going through those comics. That's also on the main Longbox Crusade feed. Each show does have its separate feed. You can also hear Saturday Matinee Theater as well, where we're going through black and white serials, TV shows from years gone by, things that we can find there as well. And also you can catch us on the On Her Majesty's Secret podcast, which is a venture we're on with covering the James Bond episodes there as well. You can find me if you want to direct contact me. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Christatos01. Otherwise, you can also contact the main Twitter is at Longbox Crusade. Or if you're on Facebook, you can find at Longbox Crusade there as well. Or you can look me up under just Pat Sampson.
And again, excuse me. Try that again. And again, like I say, due to timing and not enough time in the day, I haven't listened to your Secret Service podcast, but I listen to everything else you do. I wasn't sure about the Sherlock Holmes one at first because I'm like, well, I haven't watched these. I enjoy Sherlock Holmes, but I get so far on podcasts as is, I don't have time for another one. You know what, though? It's my buddy Pat. I got to check it out. So I've listened to every episode of that so far. I'm enjoying your shows.
Thank you.
I don't have time, but I find time to listen to them just because. And that's I'm afraid to check out the James Bond one because that's another show to listen to.
If you like, if you like listening to us, you gotta talk here. If you like James, do you like James Bond?
Yeah, I enjoy James Bond. Yeah.
Then.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, take a listen to it. You know what? The best thing that I found is with listening to the podcast is I speed them up a little bit to like I think I'm at a 1.3 or a 1.4. I'm able to speed it up to just on a separate app, not because the actual Apple app doesn't. It goes like 1 and then 1.5, so it's 2 kind of. So I speed it up a little bit. And that's definitely helped me.
Yeah, I've accidentally bumped the button and knocked it up to 1.5, and I'm like, it doesn't sound right to me. I can't do because I've heard people say they speed it up and listen to it a faster.
Yeah.
I tried the 1.5, and it's too, like you said, it's just a little too fast for me. But
too much, yeah. I'm trying to think of I don't know if is it Pocket Cast or something that I use. I don't know. I got it from Shag.
Okay, I know Overcast or
might be over. Something like that, but
I downloaded the one this Shag was recommending, and I was trying to look at my phone now to find Overcast.
Is it Overcast?
I think Shag recommended that one. I've got that downloaded on my phone. I just haven't used it yet. I mean, I've set some of the podcasts up on here, but again, I have a whole bunch of podcasts. So I haven't finished getting them set up, and I'm afraid to make that leap to something new.
I would say do it. I mean, if you want to listen, get some things done. It is very helpful.
Right on.
For me to,
Well, so like where I was going with this, before we got sidetracked again, as we want to do. I definitely recommend all your shows, Pat. You've got some great shows. I enjoy the banter between you and
thank you,
the Albert brothers and Delvin, and it's a great time. I enjoy the podcasts. You have great guests. Like recently, you had Darren Sutherland. Speaking of the Sutherlands, you had Darren on your the last episode of your that I listened to at this point of your Sherlock Holmes podcast.
Yeah,
Saturday Matinee. He was a great guest. You had Clinton on. He's a great guy.
Yeah, it's fun to get. I think getting more guests on like that is helpful too. We have fun, and I think that having people on like you and Clinton and
Darren and just some of the other people we've had on our shows and the ones that are still yet to come.
Right.
I think is just fun. I think, getting them on and then getting them to relax and have fun with us.
Right. Well, again, thank you very much for taking this endeavor with me and helping me out.
Well, thank you. I wish it all the best. I know I'm definitely listening. I have been listening. I appreciate everything you've done. I enjoy your shows as well. I mean, that's.
Glad to hear that. I mean, like you said, you thanked me for helping you get started. Like if I can pass this addiction on to somebody else, more the merrier.
Yeah. It is an addiction. I will definitely tell you that.
Sadly.
Yeah.
All right, Pat. Well, it's getting late here, so I know it's even later for you. So I appreciate your time, and we'll be talking to you soon, buddy.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Head Speaks will be back after these messages.
Hello, I'm Pat Sampson, and I would like to invite you to join me on my podcast, The Longbox Crusade. On this podcast, I'm reading through my 20-plus long boxes that I have stored away in my basement. On each episode, I will select a random issue from my collection and take a very highbrow, thoughtful approach to examining these truly American art forms that help to shape our popular culture.
Oh, I like comics too. Can I get a comic out of my long box that syncs up with the month and year of the comic from your long box and chat about that too? Oh, and video games. Can we talk about games? Or maybe James Bond too? I love James Bond.
Fine. Jared Albrecht, a.k.a. the Yard Sale Artist. We can add some of your comics and enthusiasm to the show. It might help get a deeper introspection of...
Did someone say James Bond? I love James Bond. And I love comics too. I can bring a comic from my long box to sync up with you guys. I also love movies and music, even news stories that tie into the time period that match the comic books we review.
This is what I get for inviting both the Albrecht brothers into my show. Jason, how the heck can we fit all that into my deeply intellectual review of... well, you know what? Fine. Let's do it. Let's cram it all into one podcast. Join us on the Longbox Crusade, folks. We'll bounce around in time from issue to issue, pulled randomly from my long boxes, and the Albrecht brothers will bring along issues with the same month and year cover date. We'll talk about the comics and the time period they come from, including...
world news of that time. Top 40 music chart toppers.
Movies, both good and bad. Maybe even some favorite recipes.
Whatever I think is funny. We'll probably have to suffer through things that Jared thinks are funny.
We'll jam it all into one pop culture extravaganza, examining the comics in my longbox and the time period surrounding them. Join us for a wild ride through time on the Longbox Crusade podcast as we attempt to read them all.
What's in your longbox?
Hi, John.
Hi, Maggie.
I'm still wrapping my brain around the fact that we're married.
Me too, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Aw.
Well, hey, I was looking at these old comics and I noticed that there's
Hold that thought. Why don't we talk about it on our podcast?
We have a podcast?
It seems like the logical next step. We get married, we change our names, we combine our comic collections, we start a podcast about comic books. I mean, we're always having way too detailed conversations about all things comic related anyway. Why not share them with people?
Well, I can't fault your logic there, but there are plenty of podcasts out there already. Do you really think we'll have anything new and interesting to say?
Oh, I think we'll manage. And at the very top, by this railing, is a guy.
Tony Stark.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's just a guy.
Could be just a guy, but I want to think of him as the spy that they planted there.
That's just Spider-Man just
running down the side of
a building because I was like, that's really cool. That's not something I can do.
Day drinking. Welcome to the Married with Comics podcast, where we constantly fuck up.
It goes from Marvel Girl to Phoenix to Marvel Girl to Jean Grey to Phoenix to Dead.
Where Thing immediately demonstrates why I'm not overly fond of them.
and yet we're still married.
To say, wow, you sure didn't find her in no pile of mothballs, chum. Like, what the hell is that? And then apparently he's so consumed with his own thoughts that he runs right past 3 monkeys in the alleyway. A brainwave camera took a picture of that guy's head. A brainwave camera took a picture of some guy's head.
And Ben's just basically, whatever you gotta do to stop the commies, Nick.
Stan the Man Lee, the most shameless self-promoter that has ever existed, and I wouldn't have him any other way.
So join us at the Married with Comics podcast. We're two newlyweds with a love for comics intelligently, critically, and thoughtfully discuss comic books.
Also listen as we goof around, make jokes, and make fun of John for mispronouncing names.
I do that a lot.
Sometimes we'll pick a topic and review and discuss comics that relate to the topic.
And sometimes we'll pick up a comic and see what discussion topics come up. And sometimes we'll spend an entire episode talking about how much Maggie loves Batman.
The only thing that's almost as strong as my love for you is my love for Batman.
What about your hatred for Jimmy Olsen?
And my hatred of Jimmy Olsen.
The Married with Comics podcast. Available directly on our site at marriedwcomics.libsyn.com, on iTunes, and wherever good podcasts are found. Also, check us out at Facebook at the Married with Comics podcast.
We've got everything you need.
And now back to Head Speaks. So on this episode of At the Movies of Head, I'm going to look at all the different comic book movies from the 2 big companies. I'm stealing this idea from another podcasting buddy. I'm sure several groups have done it so far, but I'm stealing this. I've recently listened to Andrew Leyland on the Glittering Palace of Delights or whatever, and he's recently covered this and listed the Marvel movies from the worst, in his opinion, to the best. Again, not necessarily worst to the best, but his least favorite to his favorite. So I decided I'm going to take a page out of his book and do the same, but I'm going to do it for both Marvel and DC. But separately, because, again, there's not a lot of comparison between the two, unfortunately. Comic book-wise, I'm a DC guy, but movie-wise, I am a Marvel guy. So first up, we're going to look at the DC movies, and I'm going to list them from the worst, in my opinion, to the best. There's been 5 movies as of this recording that I'm looking at. So let's take a look at them. And like any proper list, we're going to start in reverse order. So we'll start number 5 on my list, which, seeing how I do a Task Force X podcast, this should be number 1. But sadly, it's number 5. We're going to go with the Suicide Squad movie from 2016. I need to do a commentary on this movie, but the more I watch it, the more I dislike it. Though I never got to the point yet of hating it. It's not. I want to say it's not a good film, but it's not a good Suicide Squad film. Anywhere from and again, these are, I guess I should say now, there may be spoilers for even all these movies, so if you don't want spoilers, don't listen. But Suicide Squad, starting with the horrible Leto Joker we've got, from both his performance and the makeup design, the design of the character, I just hated that. Not a big fan of the slutty Harley Quinn that we got. Like the more traditional Harley Quinn. The race changed Deadshot. The lackluster Rick Flag. And the villainous Amanda Waller. This movie had a lot of bad notes on it. I heard on, I think it was the Now Playing podcast that was done by a video game director, was edited by a video game director, or music video director or something. You can see that. There's a lot of flash and style, but very little substance to it. And again, I'll talk more about this on my Task Force X podcast. I've talked about it some. I'll talk about it again later. But I felt the plot itself was a bad plot for a first movie, that the Suicide Squad had to stop one of their own. That's not a bad idea, but it should have been maybe the second film. The first film should have been them getting together, forming the team before having to fight one of their own, in my opinion. Wasn't a fan of the way they did the Enchantress in this movie. I am more partial to the witch's hat and the skimpy outfit she wears in the fully clothed outfit that she had in the Suicide Squad. Not this whatever half slutty thing she had on. Plus, I don't know. And that's coming from me. I do like they touched on her brother, Incubus, who was from the comics. That was nice, but there was a lot of problems with it. Also, the fact that, they got a covert team to go into, Detroit, to fight this big menace that a lot of heroes should have seen, and we should add some more heroes in it. I did like the nice touch that the building they went to rescue Waller was called the John Ostrander Building, who was the creator of the original villainous team of Suicide Squad. Because there was an earlier Task Force X Suicide Squad, but John Ostrander created the great team, and the one that I cover in my Task Force X podcast. But yeah, this movie had a lot going wrong with it. I'm assuming they made Deadshot black because they wanted to have more black people in the movie, more representation. I think that was silly. They should have left Deadshot as he was, and because there are black characters they could have pulled from the comic. A great one would have given him another hero to, maybe not necessarily a hero. He started out villainous, but he became a hero. I'm talking about Bronze Tiger, a.k.a. Ben Turner, a perfectly good black character that part of the Suicide Squad, part of their history, part of the origin of the Suicide Squad. It would have been a damn fine addition to the movie. I think that Bronze Tiger would have been perfect for it. I just think they missed the boat. So, again, this is the lowest on my spectrum. I will, since I do have a Task Force X podcast, I will talk more about this later. Trust me on this. I've talked about it before my show. I plan at some point in the future, hopefully near future, doing a commentary track on it. I've got a couple people lined up for that. Just finding time to get them together and do it. But that's number 5 on my list. The fourth one on my list, my second least favorite of the movies, and again, not saying any of them are bad per se, but this is my least favorite of them, is Man of Steel. I enjoyed the movie, don't get me wrong. Again, none of these are horrible movies. It's just out of the list, this is my least favorite, I believe, out of them. And again, this list is purely mine, purely subjective or objective, whichever. It could change at any moment, given my whims and fancy, but Man of Steel, again, it was a good movie overall. My problems with it, why it's so far down the list, the main one is that, and I've said before, that Superman, his costume was too dark. He was, again, while he wasn't, killing everyone in sight, dark, it was a darker movie. To me, Superman should be a character full of hope and enlightenment and give you hope for the future. There was a couple scenes in here and there that did, but overall, I didn't get that sense of hope I wanted from this movie. I didn't care for the way that Pa Kent said, "To heck with everyone else, it's worried about you." I understand what they were going for, but that's not Pa Kent to me. Pa Kent to me is, oh yeah, you got these powers, Clark. I understand that, you got these problems, you got these people that's trying to, maybe try to use you, but you need to do what you can to help people. To me, that's Pa and Ma Kent. And I could have dismissed this and just, okay, but as long as Ma Kent's a little more people-friendly, but I think it was the Batman vs. Superman movie kind of shot that down. So in retrospect, I don't care for Pa's writing in here, the way he's written. I don't have a problem with him killing Zod at the end of the movie. Again, he's done that in the comics, Under Arrest. He's done that in the original, Superman 2 movie. So he's done it before, so it's not a new thing. I didn't have a problem with that. I understood completely why that was. I had a problem with the destruction of Metropolis. This came out during the same era as like Pacific Rim and Transformers and a lot of these other movies that destruction porn. I have a problem. I mean, again, maybe it's just because I'm getting old, but I get tired. And maybe if this had been a little movie I'd seen it, it may have been a little bit different. But again, seeing all these other movies saying destruction and destruction and see so much utter destruction, I just get tired of it. So while I can't necessarily fault Man of Steel for that, I do fault it that they had all that destruction. Metropolis, I understand what they're going for, but again, all that destruction again, I'm 48 at this point in my life. I just get tired of seeing movies just destruction for destruction's sake. I don't know. Again, it wasn't a horrible movie, but it had some problems that brought it down on my list. Though having said that, I will say I do like the way that Henry Cavill portrayed the Man of Steel. I thought he looked like the Man of Steel. Again, I wanted the costume to be a little more brighter, a little more blue, a little more red, a little more yellow. Not as dark and danky, but I wanted Superman to be a little more hopeful, if you will. But I thought he did a good job as an actor. So I don't blame him. I blame the writers and maybe the director or producer. Maybe WB, because most of these films have this darker overtone that kind of detracts from it, in my opinion. But that's number 4 is The Man of Steel. Number 3, in my opinion, is Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. I don't think this movie deserves all the hate it gets. It wasn't great. It's third on my list of DC films, but it wasn't horrible. One of my biggest problems with this movie, as I've said elsewhere, is I don't like the 20-year gap between Batman and Superman having came about. Because in the movie, Batman's been around for 20 years, Superman's only been around for like a year and a half. I think they should be contemporaries. I think started Batman too old to do the movie proper. They should be contemporaries. Batman shouldn't be a tired, ready to kill everybody vigilante by this point. He should be the younger, more youthful Bruce. When I first heard Ben Affleck was going to be Batman, I was like, I don't know. I saw Argo. I changed my tune. I said, he might do all right at it. And yeah, he did a good job for what they gave him. Again, I don't blame most of the actors in here. I just feel that the writing and some of the directing wasn't where it should have been. But things I did like in this, just so it's not an all, I don't like this fest. Again, I like the interaction between Batman and Superman. I thought the introduction of Wonder Woman was very fantastic. That was great. I liked Jeremy Irons as Alfred. At first I wasn't sure because I think Irons is a great actor. I just don't see him as Alfred, but he did roll well as well. He does everything really amazingly. A lot of people give Doomsday crap. I thought Doomsday looked really good. I don't know about the whole electrical power things he kind of displayed, but other than that, I thought he didn't have the bony protrusions like he did in the comic, but they were starting to grow before he died. But other than that, I thought he looked like he should. A lot of people compared it to the Abomination. I can't blame DC for that, because again, I think Doomsday looked, if you remove his bony protrusions, like he looked a lot like the creature did. I have to blame Marvel for making their Abomination look less like the comic book. A lot of people also give hate to the Martha scene. I enjoyed that. I thought it was appropriate. It could have probably been written a little better, maybe. But a lot of people say, that's stupid. The mom have the same names. Well, again, the movie didn't make that up. Both Bruce and Clark have moms with the same names. There's just the first time I think I've ever heard it referenced and mentioned and brought to the detail that their moms share the same name. And again, a lot of people say, well, it made no sense. Well, it does to me, because to me, Batman, and again, it goes back to part of my main problem about Batman try that again. It goes back to my main problem about Batman being too old, in quotes in this case, that Batman started off more like, in my opinion, like the Batman we see from the comics. It's still the Dark Knight, but not as willing to let people die as he does in this movie. In fact, there's a great line earlier when he's talking with Alfred, and Bruce says something along the lines of, there's no difference between me and the villains. And Alfred said, there used to be. which says that Batman wasn't always this cold and heartless in the past. I think his death of Robin, plus everything else, 20 years of crime fighting have led him to this point. And so when he's fighting Superman, and Superman tells him, save Martha, and that first of all, it mentions his mom. Well, not mentioning his mom, but, it's his mom's name, so it makes him think his mom, and it makes him realize, oh, shit. What if I started this in honor of my parents, to avenge my parents, to honor my parents' memory, and this is what it turned into? If my mom could see me, if my mom Martha could see me now, she would be ashamed of me. And also then when Lois comes up and tells him that that's his mom's name, it's Clark's or Superman's mom's name, it makes Bruce, again, this is my opinion, it's not really, maybe that's part of the problem, it's not quite clearly stated in the movie, but I think, come on people, use your brain and think about things. But I think it makes Bruce think, because before, he thought this alien creature that came here, brought destruction upon Earth, even though we know it's not Superman's fault that Zod came and tried destroying the world. Superman stopped it from happening. From Bruce's perspective, this is an alien that came and helped destroy a large chunk of Metropolis, and finding out that he has a mom just like he does, in fact, very close to his mom because of the name thing, plus the fact they're both hot, but that's another story entirely, makes him realize that maybe Superman's not this alien monster he thought he was, that maybe, there's this Earth human that's willing to stand up for him. He's got a mom. Maybe he's a little more human, in quotes, than Bruce was giving him credit for. Again, it might have been written a little better, maybe a little less clunky, but I personally enjoyed it. I thought it very fitting. And another scene people give crap to is the scene when Clark has Bruce go save his mom, and so Batman shows up to Martha Kent, and she's like, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm a friend of your son's." Everyone says, "Well, you're not a friend of his son's. You guys were just fighting just a few minutes ago." I think these people need to chill the blank out. I mean, yes, they were fighting. He was trying to kill him a few moments ago, but then Batman kind of softened a little bit, and this is a bit of an emergency. Instead of spending half an hour explaining to Clark's mom how, well, yeah, I thought your son was an inhuman alien monster, so I was trying to kill him, but then we talked things out, and you got the same name as my mom, so it made me realize that spending half an hour explaining why he's there to save her, it's quickest just to say, well, I'm a friend of your son's. That wraps it up, and it kind of shorthand. I mean, again, this is an emergency situation. So I did not have a problem with that. A lot of people I've heard on the internet complain about that. I think they need to shut up. That's my opinion. I thought that was a good scene, and it got the job done, in my opinion. So again, like I say, it wasn't a bad movie. I enjoyed Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, and the name may be a little long, but that's another story entirely. But yeah, I enjoyed Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. I thought it was a good movie. It wasn't the greatest. Still some problems, as I've talked about. But overall, I enjoyed it. Moving on to number 2 on my list, Justice League. And this is number 2, partly just because of I've waited 48 years, or pretty close. I guess actually the time is 47 years, or pretty close, for a Justice League movie. This has gathered Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg. Well, wait, Cyborg, that's another issue. That's a comic issue. But, yeah, I didn't say Flash and Aquaman because I don't know if I saw them in this movie, but I'll get to that in my complaint. And that's why this isn't my number 1 movie. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. Again, there is part of the problems with it is still that whole time dissolution from, between Superman and Batman being around. I don't like that still, but nothing named about it because that was started already. There seems to be some timeline wonkiness with Wonder Woman. We'll get to that in the Wonder Woman movie also. DC / Warner Brothers doesn't seem to have their act together. Doesn't seem to know what they're doing yet, which is part of the problem with DC Universe movies overall. But Justice League, I enjoyed, as I said, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. I enjoyed the guy that played Cyborg. I did enjoy his CGI throughout most of the movie. I thought his CGI was very wonky and it looked like CGI. And I'm the kind of guy that doesn't usually notice CGI issues. Like with Superman's mustache, everyone complained about. I didn't notice the problem with that. In case you don't know, apparently they had to do some reshoots. Henry Cavill was shooting Mission Impossible 6 or 7 or 55 or whatever they're up to. And in that movie had a mustache. Well, Universal, whoever does the Mission Impossible movies didn't want him to shave the mustache. So Warner Brothers had to go in there and CGI it out. I don't recall. I'll have to watch again and see. I knew about it, but I didn't see it. I didn't notice any of those scenes with it in there. So it's fine. But Cyborg, I noticed it was very CGI-like. Other characters I didn't care for. Flash, I hated the costume. I thought the character did a horrible job. He was written horribly. Not only was he not blonde, he was black-haired, which bugs the hell out of me. And he looks like he had ADD or something. He was, and again, I could see a feature having that problem. That's not Barry. If you're going to call him Barry Allen, you need to make him Barry Allen. He was unemployed, living in, wherever he was, tunnels or whatever, scraping up pieces of technology together. That's not Barry Allen. Bruce had to get him a job at the end. I disliked the whole character, the whole thing they did. The costume was horrible, as I said. The special effects was interesting, but it doesn't make up for everything else. Also, I intensely disliked Aquabro, as me and the wife call him. He seemed more like a frat guy than Aquaman. I hated the dark hair. I hated the whole kind of bro attitude he had. Again, these two characters is what really brought this down to second place for me. If these guys had been written better, it may have been up a little higher, maybe. Although he's got one more spot, but it could have maybe been higher. Also, the villain, Steppenwolf wasn't a bad villain. He was kind of CGI, kind of fake looking. I think they should have went for Darkseid like I originally heard they were going to, but I can understand why they didn't. Since Marvel was coming out with, and they've been slowly introducing Thanos. Darkseid and Thanos are very much the same character, just for different companies. So I can understand why they didn't want to go with Darkseid, since Marvel's already introduced Thanos, and they would just be, people that don't know, oh, you're just copying Marvel. Well, yeah, but that's the character. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. I thought the fight scenes were pretty good. I was talking on a message board, they were saying one reason Flash was relegated to saving people outside instead of fighting Steppenwolf is that he was afraid of Steppenwolf. I don't know if that's true, and if so, it's even worse because the Flash, even Barry Allen, even if he's afraid of something, he's going to fight it head on. He's not going to just be sidelined just because of that. They did, again, spoilers, they did bring Superman back from the dead when he died in the last movie, which I forgot to mention that they did kind of adapt the Death of Superman movie in Batman vs. Superman. I enjoyed that. Again, more of the wonkiness. At the end of the last movie, Batman vs. Superman, when they were at Kansas, and something else I forgot to mention on that, I'll mention that real quick. They buried, in Batman vs. Superman, going back a movie real quick, they buried Clark Kent in Kansas, and they had an empty tomb in Metropolis where they buried Superman at. I think they should have went the comic approach and kept it the same and kept Clark with not finding his body and burying Superman in Metropolis. That way, when they bring him back, and they're going to bring him back, it would make it easier to explain that, Clark Kent would just vanish in the rubble and they found him, much like they did in the comic. They could have followed the comic. The comic laid this out for him. All they had to do was follow the layout that was already there. But instead, they buried Clark Kent and they had a body in Gotham, in Smallville. So now they're going to have to explain why Clark Kent's back alive. I think he kind of dig himself in a hole. They're going to probably screw it up getting out of it like they normally do, but we'll see what happens. But as I was saying, at the end of Batman vs. Superman, we see the ground kind of lifting up where Superman was at, kind of insinuating he was coming back to life or something was happening to bring him back to life. I think maybe they didn't know what they were going to do. They wanted to give you a hint that he was coming back. But in this movie, that ties nothing to do with that. Batman digs up his body, puts him in the fluid chamber, whatever, that created Doomsday, and used Flash to bring him back to life. a little wonky, a little clunky there. That could have done that better. But overall, it was a decent movie. And I heard this was going to be a 2-part movie originally, and they scrapped it, and now it's just a 1-movie standalone movie. Again, I don't know how much that was conjecture and fanboy speculation, but that's what I've heard. But that's Justice League, which is number 2 on my list. Then we move to the top of the list with my favorite movie of the DC Universe movies, Wonder Woman. I thought Wonder Woman was a great movie. Like everything else, it may have its problems, but I think it had less than all the rest of the movies. And that's why on the top of my list. It was great to see a female-oriented mainstream DC superhero character. I mean, I know there's been others. There's been Elektra's had her own movie, and there's been these other characters that had movies, but I think Elektra dropped the ball heavily. And then there's been a lot of independent characters from independent companies that had movies, but I think Wonder Woman, discounting Elektra just because the movie had so many problems, Wonder Woman was the first major character, especially from DC. And again, this kind of where Marvel's dropping the ball. They've got a Captain Marvel movie lined up with a female hero, but they've had Wasp. They could have had a movie out for her already, but they haven't, so they're kind of behind the 8 ball on that. But other than that, we'll get to Marvel later. But I thought Wonder Woman did a great job bringing her into the world. It was set a period piece. They set it in World War I believe it was, because Captain America was in World War II, or vice versa. I forget now. But it's another World War because Captain America was in the other one. So, and they don't want to be the same as that. But I love the inclusion of Steve Rogers. I thought that was great. Only problem including Steve Rogers in her origins is he may not be around age-wise for the later movies, but that's a moot point, I guess. But overall, yes, I enjoyed Wonder Woman. I thought the humor was good. My daughter loved it. My family loved it. So, and that's a big plus when my family loves it because, again, my daughter's a geek. She's much like her dad. My wife is kind of geeky, not as much so. So when she loves these movies, you know they're good. So, again, that's my top DC. That's my DC list. Start at the bottom going up. And I think I was going to do this all in one show, but I think, again, I'm going to split these up. I will do DC this time, and the next time I'll do the Marvel movies or later ones. So those are my top 5 in order DC movies. And these are just from, again, the current DC Cinematic Universe. It's not counting all the junk and the good stuff that came before. Maybe at some point I'll rate those also, but this is just for the current DC Cinematic Universe. So what do you guys think? Am I crazy? Am I right? You can email me at head@headspeaks.com and let me know what you think about these movies. Are they good? Did you like them? Am I wrong? Did you miss something? Did I miss something? Let me know. We're going to go and move on. There's no real feedback to give. I think I've given all the feedback I need to give. Unfortunately, I don't get any emails from you guys. I haven't got any ratings from anybody. Go ahead and go on Apple Podcasts, rate me, give me a review, let me know what you guys think. I would love hearing from everybody. Send me an email, send me a Facebook post. I know I do have a new listener out there, Jonathan Hames, who's actually, I'm playing his podcast this episode. I met him on Facebook. We have mutual friends in common. We met through a comment on that. And I'd mentioned that I do, podcasts. And so he asked which podcasts I do. I gave him a list, and he said he started listening. He's been listening to the G.I. Joe one, some of the others. And I just want to say, hey, Jonathan, so I'm playing his promo this time. He's got a new podcast with his wife. So just want to give him a shout out. And anyone that I that's written in, or again, no one's written in, but anyone that's commented on my Facebook posts. Again, I don't check Twitter like I should. I need to get back on Twitter. That's at Headcast Network. Or on Facebook, I'm at Headcast Network or Head Speaks. Again, either one, you can find me there. But yeah, I'm kind of babbling at this point. Go ahead and write in and let me know what you guys think. I enjoy hearing from you guys. I guess that's going to do it. Until next time, remember, Head has spoken. thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Head Speaks. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know. Drop me an email to head@headspeaks.com or visit our home at head.headspeaks.com. You can also visit and talk with me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. You can also send an MP3 file with your thoughts, and I can play that on the air. And you can also get more of me on my other podcasts. Be sure to listen to Task Force X, where monthly I look at John Ossinger's Suicide Squad and Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate comics from the 80s and early 90s. Also, over on G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, my podcasting friends Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, along with myself, are looking at all of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero comics, and related titles from Marvel and IDW. All of my headcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher, along with the respective blogs and my main page at headspeaks.com. All comments, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Head Speaks are owned wholly by the speaker of said comments and do not express the opinions of Head Speaks, unless, of course, I'm the one making the comments. Head Speaks, Task Force X, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, are all part of the Headcast family. So, join us next month for another wonderful episode of Head Speaks. Until then, I'll see you in the funny pages. Good night.